Welcome to the Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard, where continuing education meets convenience. Lisa brings therapists practical conversations with expert guests who share tools, techniques, and insights to enrich your practice. Whether you're on a walk, commuting, or cooking dinner, you can earn continuing education contact hours and stay inspired without sitting through endless recorded trainings. Visit lisamustard.com to join the CE membership and keep your professional growth as seamless as your favorite podcast.
Well, hey friends, welcome back to another episode of The Therapy Show. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard, and I want to let you know that today's episode is a little bit different because I want to talk directly to those therapists, counselors, social workers, coaches, and mental health professionals who have ever wondered, should I start a podcast? But before we dive into this content, I want to remind you about my pod courses. Pod courses are podcast episodes plus a self-study course. I had one come out last week, which is all about CBT and adult ADHD. I will drop all the links in the show notes for you to learn more about my pod courses. My company, Mustard Consulting, is a NBCC approved provider. So you can get over 30 pod courses at this point in time for $49. Now, I am thinking about raising that price in the near future. So if you want to get over 30 NBCC contact hours, go ahead and purchase them today purchase the bundle today because anytime I add a new pod course, it goes into that bundle. You don't have to pay anything more. So if you pay $49 today, you'll get any of the new pod courses that will be added to your bundle within the year of you having that membership. Now, the price is probably going to go up. It's not going to go up like huge, but things are happening in this world. Things are getting more expensive. And so I have to kind of roll with the tide, and I'm going to more than likely moving forward, the pod courses will go up a little bit. Okay, so that's one thing I want to tell you. Now, the other cool thing I want to tell you before we dive into this content is that I have a really cool promotion going on with Berries, and Berries is a mental health AI note taker. It's super cool. I know you'll have lots of questions about, is it HIPAA compliant? Is it private, confidential, all that good stuff? Yes, all of those things. I will put links in the show notes for you to learn more about Berries. First of all, you can always try Berries for free. You can always get it for free to see if it's going to fit your needs and fit your business. Second of all, if you like it, you can get $50 off of your first month with the code TherapyShow50. The cool thing is, if you go ahead and purchase the year-long subscription with Berries, if you pay for it all up front and you use my referral link, you can get all my pod courses for free within that year. Anytime I add a new pod course, you're going to get that added to the pod course bundle. So you'll have to purchase the Berries annual subscription plan. I'll put my referral link in the show notes. When you purchase it, you have to send me an email, but all that information will be in the show notes about how do you go ahead and then get the pod course bundle. Another cool thing that I want to share with y'all is if you don't already know, Berries has started a free academy, and I have become their CE course administrator. So right now you can get 1.25 contact hours, NBCC approved, for free. I'll put that link in the show notes. It's all about AI and the promise of AI for mental health professionals. They do have more courses coming out. They should probably be rolling out here in the next couple of weeks. Don't really have a timeline on that yet, but I wanted to go ahead and go ahead and bookmark that page once you go ahead and click on it in the show notes, because they will have more continuing education offerings coming, hopefully really, really soon. And it's free. You get 1.25 contact hours for free. Now, they're NBCC approved only at this point in time. Will I get other approvals in the near future? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not, but it's great content. It's great information. Even if you don't want the CE contact hour, you can get all of it for free. You can watch it. Kim Tolson does a bang up job of explaining AI and how we as therapists can use it ethically, compliantly, all that good stuff. All right. So let's talk about, should you start a podcast? Should you? Well, maybe you've had this idea in the back of your mind for a while, and maybe you love listening to podcasts and you thought, hey, I could do this. I mean, that's what I thought many years ago. I love listening to podcasts, and I thought, man, I could do this. I can really do this. Maybe people have told you that you have a lot of knowledge to share, or maybe you're looking for a way to grow your practice, build your professional reputation, create continuing education, or expand beyond one-to-one clinical work. I'm going to walk you through what therapists need to think about before starting that podcast. Not just the fun parts like what microphone do you get and what do you title your episodes, but the bigger questions around audience, purpose, ethics, sustainability, and how a podcast might fit into your larger professional goals. Because here's what I have learned. Podcasting can be incredibly powerful, but it's not automatically powerful just because you start one. A podcast works best when it has a purpose. It works best when you know who you are speaking to, and it works best when it connects to something bigger than just, I think I should have a podcast. So today we're going to talk about what you need to know before you hit record. But before we dive into that, I want to share the usual reminder that this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. It does not replace therapy, consultation, supervision, or legal or ethical advice. Please use your own professional judgment and consult with the appropriate professionals when needed. Okay, let's dive in. Over the years, I've had a lot of therapists ask me about podcasting. Some want to start a podcast because they want to attract clients. Some want to interview other professionals, and some want to build a platform around their specialty. Some are thinking about writing a book, creating a course, or speaking more. And some just feel like they have something meaningful to say. I understand all of these. As therapists, we spend so much of our professional lives in private conversations. We hear patterns, we notice what people are struggling with, we see gaps in education, communication, and support. And many of us reach a point where we want to share what we've learned in a broader way. And podcasting can be a wonderful way to do that because it gives you a voice. It allows people to experience your style, your way of thinking, and your personality. It can build trust before someone ever contacts you, refers to you, buys from you, learns from you, or even collaborates with you. And let me just share on the side, I have experienced that myself firsthand. It's really, really cool when that happens, by the way. All right, but I also want to say this clearly, not every therapist needs a podcast because podcasting is not magic. It is not a quick fix for marketing. And it is not necessarily the easiest path if what you need is immediate income or immediate clients. But when it is aligned with your strengths, your audience, and your larger goals, it can become one of the most valuable professional assets you build. The first question I would ask any therapist who is thinking about starting a podcast is this: why do you want one? And I don't mean that in a challenging way, I mean it in a clarifying way. Because the reason behind your podcast will shape everything. It will shape your topics, it will shape your format, it will shape your tone, it will shape your calls to action, it will shape whether you are speaking to potential clients, other therapists, referral sources, organizations, or a broader public audience. For example, a podcast designed to attract therapy clients is going to sound very different from a podcast designed to provide continuing education to therapists. And a podcast for couples will sound different from a podcast for clinicians. A podcast for parents of anxious teens will sound different from a podcast for therapists who want to learn about documentation, ethics, AI, or clinical interventions. So before you pick a name, buy a microphone, or start recording any episodes, pause and ask yourself, who am I trying to reach? What do I want this podcast to do? Do I want it to help people find my therapy practice? Do I want it to support a coaching offer? Do I want it to build referral relationships? Do I want to create educational content for other professionals? Do I want to support a course, membership, book, or consulting service? Do I want this to be a creative outlet? Or do I want it to become a part of a larger business model? Because if you do not know why you are creating the podcast, it is very easy to lose steam after the initial excitement wears off. And one of the questions I hear a lot is, isn't everyone starting a podcast? And yes, there are a lot of podcasts out there. There are a lot of therapy related podcasts, wellness podcasts, mental health podcasts, coaching podcasts, and personal development podcasts. But here's what I want you to remember: crowded does not always mean saturated. A field can be crowded and still have room for a clear, thoughtful, well positioned voice. The bigger issue is not that there are too many podcasts. The bigger issue is that many podcasts are not clearly positioned. They don't have a defined audience, they don't have a clear promise, and they don't make it easy for listeners to understand why they should keep listening. For therapists, this is why your clinical training and your ability to understand people can become a real strength because you know how to listen, you know how to organize ideas, you know how to explain complex concepts, and you know how to speak to pain points, needs, fears, and hopes. That is all valuable, but you still need clarity. A podcast about helping high achieving professionals manage anxiety, perfectionism, and burnout is way more specific. A podcast helping couples communicate through resentment, disconnection, and life transitions is way specific too. A podcast teaching therapists practical continuing education they can use in their work is more specific. That's me. I'm raising my hand. A podcast about therapists creating courses, podcasts, and educational platforms is more specific. Specificity helps people recognize that your show is for them, and that truly matters. This is one of the most important decisions you'll make. Who is your podcast for? Not who could possibly enjoy it, not who might maybe find it interesting, but who are you intentionally speaking to? Are you speaking to potential therapy clients? Are you speaking to other therapists? Are you speaking to parents? Are you speaking to couples? Are you speaking to women in midlife? Are you speaking to clinicians in private practice? Are you speaking to mental health professionals who need continuing education? Are you speaking to referral partners? Are you speaking to leaders, organizations, or healthcare professionals? Because the clearer you are about your audience, the easier it becomes to create episodes that connect. And when you try to speak to everyone, you often end up creating content that feels vague. But when you picture a specific listener, everything becomes easier because then you can ask, what is this person struggling with? What are they curious about? What do they already believe? And what do they misunderstand? What do they need to know? What would make them feel seen? And what would help them take the next step? For example, if I'm speaking to therapists who need continuing education, I know they're busy. I know they probably do not want to sit through hours of video if they can avoid it. I know they want practical information. I know they want something that they can fit into real life, maybe while walking, commuting, working out at the gym, cooking dinner, or folding laundry. That understanding shaped the way my pod course model developed. It came from paying attention to what therapists actually needed: accessible, flexible, affordable, continuing education that worked with their lives. And that is one of the gifts of podcasting. It can help you listen to your audience and more deeply over time. Another question I would ask: what do you want this podcast to help you become known for? This is especially important for therapists because we often have many interests. You might work with anxiety, trauma, couples, family systems, burnout, parenting, grief, ADHD, midlife transitions, perfectionism, or even practice building. And all of those may be really meaningful to you. But from a listener's perspective, too many unrelated topics can make it hard to understand what your show is about. Podcasting works best when people can mentally file you under something. That does not mean you can never explore adjacent topics, but it does mean there should be a thread. Maybe your thread is helping therapists grow professionally. Maybe it's practical CE for busy clinicians. Maybe it's helping couples communicate more effectively. Maybe it's helping therapists use technology ethically. Maybe it's helping clinicians turn their expertise into courses, podcasts, and educational offers. Your podcast can become a body of work that builds your authority over time. And this is one of the things I absolutely love about podcasting. Each episode may seem small on its own, but over months and over years, you are building a library that reflects your values, your expertise, your curiosity, and your professional voice. So let's talk about format. There are several ways therapists can structure a podcast. You can do solo episodes, you can do interviews, you can do co-hosted conversations, you can do short educational episodes, you can do long-form discussions, you can do a limited series, you can do Q&A style episodes. You can create episodes that support continuing education if you have the right approval structure and process in place, because each format has benefits and challenges. Solo episodes are wonderful for building authority because your audience gets to hear directly from you. They can also be easier because you're not scheduling with guests, but solo episodes require you to organize your thought and carry the episode yourself. Interview episodes can be great for networking, collaboration, and bringing in expert voices. They can also take pressure off of you because you are in a conversation. But they do require scheduling, preparation, communication, guest management, and sometimes more editing. A limited series can be a great way to start if a weekly podcast feels overwhelming. You might create a 6-episode series around one topic or one audience. This can help you test the waters before committing to an ongoing show. And then this is the educational model, which is where my podcast has evolved in a unique way. With the therapy show, I began with conversations and education for therapists. And that led to my pod course model, where therapists can listen to educational content and then complete the required steps to earn the NBCC approved continuing education credit. That model did not happen overnight. It developed because I understood my audience, saw a need, and created a structure around it. So when you're thinking about your format, don't just ask what's popular. Ask what can I sustain? What fits my personality? What serves my audience? What supports my larger goals? And what kind of show would I actually enjoy creating? Because if you do not enjoy it, at least somewhat, it will be very hard to keep going. Now, because we're therapists, we have to talk about ethics. We're not just content creators, we carry professional responsibilities into public spaces. That means podcasting requires thoughtfulness. One major issue is confidentiality. Do not share any identifiable client details. And remember, details do not have to include a name to be identifying. A unique combination of age, location, family structure, occupation, diagnosis, or situation could potentially identify someone. If you use examples, consider using composites, fictional examples, or general patterns rather than specific client stories. Another issue is scope. A podcast is not therapy, it is education. That needs to be clear. Listeners may feel like they know you, they may feel deeply connected to your voice. That is part of the power of podcasting, but it can also blur boundaries if you're not careful. So you want to have clear disclaimers. You want to avoid giving highly individualized advice. You want to be careful with language that overpromises outcomes. You want to distinguish general education from clinical recommendations. And if you're speaking to other therapists, you want to be clear that the content does not replace supervision, consultation, legal advice, or ethical decision making. Another thing to think about is guest selection. Are you interviewing people? If you're interviewing people, how are you vetting them? Are they speaking within their area of competence? Are they making claims that need to be questioned or contextualized? Are they promoting something that aligns with your values and your audience? As the host, you're not responsible for controlling every word a guest says, but your platform does carry credibility. So be thoughtful. Podcasting gives you reach, and reach comes with responsibility. At least that's what I believe. Okay, now let's get practical. You don't need a perfect studio to start a podcast. You don't need a huge launch plan. You don't need the most expensive microphone, but you do need some basic pieces. You need a clear concept. You need a defined audience. You need a name. You need simple artwork. You need a way to record. You need a mic. You need hosting. You need a basic editing workflow. You need show notes. And you need a plan for how people will find the show. One mistake people make is spending too much time on the equipment and not enough time on the strategy. Yes, sound quality matters, but the best mic in the world will not fix a vague concept. So start with clarity. A simple episode structure might look like this: open with the problem or question, introduce who the episode is for, share 3 to 5 main teaching points, offer examples or stories, give the listener a practical takeaway, and end with a clear next step. That's it. You don't need to overcomplicate it. The key is to make the listener feel like you are taking them somewhere. All right, let's talk about some common mistakes. The first mistake is starting too broad. A podcast for anyone interested in mental health is probably too broad. A podcast for therapists who want practical, accessible, continuing education is clearer. A podcast for anxious, high achieving women is clearer. A podcast for couples navigating communication resentment is clearer. The second mistake is not having a call to action. If someone listens and likes you, what should they do next? Should they visit your website, join your email list, download a guide, book a consultation, listen to another episode, explore your courses? If you never tell people what to do next, many of them will do nothing. The third mistake is expecting the podcast to grow without promotion. Publishing an episode is not the same as marketing an episode. You still need to share it. You may need blog posts, emails, social media, Pinterest, LinkedIn, collaborations, SEO, or guest appearances on other shows. And the fourth mistake is sometimes making the podcast too host centered. Of course, your voice and story matter, but the listener is usually asking, is this for me? Do you understand me? Can you help me think about something differently? The fifth mistake is not connecting the podcast to a larger ecosystem. Your podcast should not sit alone. It should connect your website, your email list, your services, your courses, your consultation options, your lead magnets, or your professional goals. This doesn't mean that every episode needs to be salesy. In fact, I totally recommend the opposite because you want to lead with value. Make sure there is a clear pathway for the listeners who want more. So, how can a podcast support a bigger business model? This is where podcasting can become really powerful. A podcast can support a private practice. It can help potential clients get a feel for your style. It can help referral partners understand your expertise. It can help you build trust in a niche. It can support a coaching business. It can support a continuing education business. It can support a course, a membership, a book, speaking platform, or consulting services. For me, podcasting opened doors I did not fully anticipate when I started. It helped me connect with experts. It helped me create a library of educational content. It helped me build a continuing education platform. And it helped me see how many therapists were looking for learning that was flexible, practical, and easier to fit into their lives. So that eventually became a part of my podcast model. And now, when I talk to therapists who want to start podcasts or create educational content, one of the first things I encourage them to think about is strategy, not just what should I record, but who is this for? What is the listener's next step? How does this fit with your business? What offer does this support? What expertise does this highlight? And what do you want to be known for? And how will you sustain it? Because podcasting can be a creative project, but it can also be a professional asset. So before you hit record, here are some questions to consider. Who is the podcast for? What problem does it help solve? What do I want to be known for? What kind of episodes can I realistically create? Do I want solo episodes, interviews, or both? How can I publish without burning out? What ethical boundaries do I need to set? What topics are aligned with my expertise? How will listeners find the show? What is the next step after they listen? Do I have an email list, a consultation offer, course, service, or resource to send them to? Am I willing to promote the podcast? And most importantly, do I actually want to do this? Because let me tell y'all, podcasting takes energy. It can be fun, meaningful, and rewarding, but it's still work. I will also want to give permission here because podcasting may not be the right fit for you right now if you need immediate income. It may not be the right fit if you are already overextended. It may not be the right fit if you do not enjoy speaking, teaching, interviewing, or creating content. And it may not be the right fit if you are not willing to promote your episodes. It may not be the right fit if you have no clear audience yet. And it may not be the right fit if you are hoping it will be passive. Podcasting is not passive. It's relational, it's cumulative, it's a long-term visibility tool. And like most relationship building tools, it takes consistency. On the other hand, podcasting might be a wonderful fit if you enjoy teaching, if you like having thoughtful conversations, if you want to build trust over time, if you have a clear niche, if you want to create evergreen content, if you want to connect with other professionals, if you want to grow a continuing education, coaching, consultation, or educational platform, or if you want to create a body of work that reflects your voice and your values. And that last piece matters because a podcast can become part of your professional legacy. It's a way of saying, here's what I care about, here's what I've learned, here's what I want to contribute. And that is powerful. So, should therapists start a podcast? Well, maybe, but not just because someone told you that you should, not just because you feel pressure to be everywhere online. Start a podcast because you have a clear audience, meaningful purpose, and a realistic plan. Start because you have something to say that can help, teach, encourage, or guide people. Start because it connects you to your larger professional goals. And start with the understanding that it does not have to be perfect. Your first episodes may feel awkward. You may change your format. I've done that a little bit over the years. You may refine your niche. I've done that a little bit here and there too. And you're going to learn as you go. Oh man, I've learned so much. And all of this is normal. The important thing is to begin with clarity and just build from there. So if you're a therapist who has been thinking about starting a podcast, creating a course, or turning your expertise into a continuing education offer, I do offer consultations to help therapists think through the strategy, structure, and next steps. You can learn more on my website, and I'll also put the link in the show notes. And if you're here because you're looking for flexible, affordable continuing education, you can also explore my MBCC approved pod courses over at lisamustard.com/pod courses. They're designed, like I said earlier, for busy therapists who want practical learning they can fit into real life. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I'm glad you're here, and I'll be back in your ears again soon. Please note that the Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and not a substitute for professional medical or mental health advice. Always consult with your therapist, doctor, or physician before implementing any suggestions from the show. The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard is edited and engineered by Chelsea Weaver. If you're looking to start a podcast or ready to take the editing off of your plate, be sure to visit chelseaweaverpodcasting.com. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine. Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover all the pod courses and other continuing education offerings. And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.